past couple of sermons I referred to Mary Gibson, Mary Irwin Gibson, our new bishop, and I've been getting lots of questions about her, what she's like and what are her strengths, and what we can expect from her and all the rest of it. One of the things I'm saying to people is, if you're interested in knowing Mary, and you've never met her, look up St. George's Cathedral in Kingston, where she's presently the dean, and look at the picture of her that's on that site as the dean of the cathedral. And the eyes and the smile will tell you just about everything you need to know about Mary. So that's one of the things I've been saying to people, and I really would suggest that. You can at least make a beginning of getting to know our new bishop by visiting their website. When a long time ago, when we were just starting out in seminary, so this is 1975. Actually, I'm not even sure if Mary was in seminary yet, because I was a year ahead of her. She might have still been working at diocesan bookroom. She gave me a present, and it's a present that I have to this day. Some of you may remember in the 60s and 70s some rather, garish isn't the word, rather, Christian jewelry that really made a statement was in fashion. Big crosses and pendants and all that sort of stuff. And the diocesan bookroom had its share of trinkets and some really fancy stuff and nice stuff. And anyway, one day, I was in the bookroom, and Mary gave me a present. And it was a cross. A rather large cross. Larger than fits under your shirt. This is definitely meant to be worn over your shirt. And it was in the center, 5 loaves in a basket, and on either arm of the cross, a fish. 5 loaves and 2 fishes. And when she gave that to me, this is a lot of years ago now, she said, that's what your ministry is going to be like. And Mary, at that particular point, still, Mary is very active, no shortage of energy. So she ran off to do something else right after giving me that, and I was just sort of standing there with this cross. And I'd like to say I appreciated her words as much as I should have. I probably didn't, but I do remember the words when she gave it to me. And when she comes to the diocese to be bishop, I think I'm going to give her back her cross and say that that's what God wants for your ministry as bishop. See, that was a strategic pause. You see, I am utterly convinced that the God who did the miracle of the loaves and fishes, and in case you ever wonder about where I stand on things, I believe that the miracles actually happened. I believe in Jesus, and if I could believe in that, the miracles, it's a sideshow compared to things like, resurrection. But I believe in the miracles, and that the miracles had a purpose. And the purpose was to encounter people at their point of need or at their point of openness. And I want to talk a bit about both of those today. Their point of openness and the point of need. When I think of that story of the miracle of the loaves and fishes, and I know it wasn't the gospel, I'm going to refer to the gospel in a while. When I read that story of the loaves and fishes, I don't know if everybody does this, but I'm kind of a visual person, as well as a talker. And so I create the image of the miracle in my mind, and I don't see Jesus, standing on a stage like in Woodstock with a proverbial microphone talking to the crowd. He's wandering amongst the crowd, he's wandering, giving them, for example, the sermon, the Beatitudes, that's what happened around the same time as the miracle of loaves and fishes. And Jesus just interacted with the people. He's being with the people. And the more people hear about him coming, the more people gather. And whether it was 5,000 or 5,123 or 3,420, I don't care. They wanted us to understand that there was a crowd there, and that Jesus fed very many with very little. Isn't that's a good one. When I put that one in the sermon, I thought that was a good line. Jesus fed very many with very little. But as he fed them, or the disciples through him, the little became a lot. Isn't that magnificent? Very ordinary elements from their day, fish and bread, and very little became a lot. Very little became the story, that's what I think of, and I think of the disciples, what must have been going through their brain as they kept on handing out this bread, and it kept growing, you know. And after it was all over, they came back to Jesus, and there was more leftovers than there had been to start. And they weren't even Anglicans at a potluck supper. You know, doesn't it sometimes feel like when our potluck suppers are over, there's more food than we started with? You know, and everybody's eating enough. And so I see Jesus as they're coming back to him. He knows all this. And I see him looking at maybe Peter, maybe John. And this is just the Jesus that I know. He just sort of looks and just gives a wink. Like there's circumstances in which something good or fun or interesting or important is happening. And as part of the scene, you know, I just sort of look at something and wink. Sometimes it's a music camp. You know, you see some kid light up, and it's just this little, we recognize what's going on here. And I have a feeling that Jesus did that on that day, that he looked at his disciples, and he winked. And I bet his spirit was filled by it as well. You know, he wasn't astonished or impressed by his miracle. You know, after all, you know, why would he be? He was kind of used to it, I guess. Maybe he never got used to it. Anyway, but I'm sure he delighted in the reaction of people. And I'm sure there had to be, in that crowd, some people who were perceivers. You know, not everybody's a perceiver. There's people who experience the moment, that's great, and people who enter the moment, that's great. There's people who connect in some moments and not others, that's the way it is. But there are people who are perceivers. You know, when they're part of a crowd, a part of a process, a part of an event, they're looking and observing and seeing what's going on. And I bet in that crowd, there were perceivers. People who were just watching what was happening and not really understanding it necessarily. Not really getting it necessarily. But just going, something is happening here. Something is going on that's outside the norm. Something special is going on here. And for those, that might have been for them, for some of them, for one of them, for 100 of them. A moment of openness in the realization that God amongst them, even though they wouldn't have been able to say that at that point, God amongst us, they wouldn't have been at that point in Jesus' ministry. God is doing something special. There's something special happening here. And it would have caused an openness of spirit that maybe they'd never had before, or maybe they had as a teenager on a retreat or something, but they were perceiving something really special was happening. And that perception would enable them later to understand more fully what God was about the business of doing. And isn't that a great definition of a bishop's ministry? To cause things to happen such that people perceive there's more going on here than meets the eye, and to want to know more, to want to take it further. And let's not pick on bishops. Isn't that the job of a minister, a priest? In the ordinariness of life and ministry and services and sermons, because we do these things so regularly, to say, to cause some people to think sometime, you know, I can't quite put my finger on it, but something is going on here that's out of the ordinary, that points to something bigger. And sometimes people find that maybe a little scary. Sometimes people may find that a little exciting, encouraging. There's all sorts of emotions. But there's something happening here that's on that side special. And I'd like to communicate that to Mary, that I really hope that her episcopacy in this diocese however long it is. You know, she's I think 1 year older than I am, so you know she's got probably 9 or 10 years. Then her episcopacy will be marked by causing, I was going to say dozens, because I was being falsely humble on her behalf, hundreds of people to say, you know, church, boy, does it have its problems. Boy, does it have its faults. But you know what? Every now and then, you get the sense that there's something going on that's special and that points to something beyond what is immediately apparent. It's not just loaves and fishes. There's more to this than meets the eye. And I hope that when we at St. Mary's consider our life and our ministry, that every one of you, everyone who has an allegiance to this place, and many more, would say, you know, there's something about that parish. For all its whatever, there's something about it where every now and then something happens where you've got to say, there's more to this than meets the eye. I wonder what it is. I wonder what it is. So, 2 reactions to the miracle of loaves and fishes. Well, there's got to be more, but I'm just talking about 2. One is, there's got to be something more to this than meets the eye. The curious. Then there would be the inevitable ones who would, no matter what Jesus did, insist on ignoring it. And I got to tell you, within the church there are those as well. People who insist on ignoring the power of God. God could almost do anything, and they still would believe. Isn't there that phrase in the Bible where it says, you know what? They won't believe even if somebody rises from the dead. Even something as powerful as a resurrection is not enough to convince some people of the imminence of God. And I chose that word intentionally. I hope it sounded intentional. The imminence of God. That God isn't out there like a kite that has to be hauled in on a string. Or even worse, like a spaceship going around some other planet. God is imminent. You know? One of the things that I have to do when I'm teaching for confirmation, for example, when we do the Lord's Prayer, Our Father who art in heaven. In heaven almost geographically locates God somewhere else, you know? And the point there is to say that God isn't bound by space and time as we are. That's the point of that He's not bound by space and time as we are. But it can have the unfortunate effect of almost accidentally teaching that God is out there or up there. And sure He is, but He's here. When we breathe, we're breathing in God. As our heart beats, it is the Spirit that's made that possible. Where can I run from your love? If I climb the heavens, you're there. If I go down to the deepest parts of the earth, you're there. Where can I run from your love? I can't. God is immanent. God is around us. And He wants us to know it. And He wants us to know Him in all the circumstances of our life. But sadly, there are some that, might I even say, the more immanent God becomes, the more they insist on denying what's going on. Worth considering. So 2 things about the loaves and fishes. One, that there will probably be people there, you know, for whom this was a trigger to an openness that led them somewhere else. For others, it would be a trigger to closedness to the immanence of God. And I would suggest that in our day and age, the exact 2 reactions are present and exist in our society and in our church. And the job of the church, it seems to me, of Bishop Mary and me and you as Christians, is to do what we can to present the truths of God in such a way that I wasn't happy with this word, but I'm going to use it, that we trigger as many people to be open to the possibility of God's imminence as we possibly can. Can I say that again? That through our lives and our witness, our words and our actions, that we trigger in as many people as possible an openness to the imminence of God. And to put this in brackets, but I'm going to get back to it in a minute, if that's not what we're trying to do in music camp, we have no reason to do music camp. If that's not what we're trying to do, we have no reason to do music camp. Because there's lots of organizations that can put on camps. And that's good. And they can put on good camps. And that's good. And the kids can have a lot of fun. And that's good. But the purpose in us doing it, third time, won't be more, to trigger an openness to the imminence of God. With that, I'm going to launch into talking a little bit about the gospel. Because it seems to me that the gospel reading for this morning is an example of what happens when a person is open to the imminence of God. Remember the story. The woman who had had a hemorrhage for 12 years. Obviously it wasn't, like an aneurysm or anything that burst. She was still very much alive. But isn't it interesting in the story that the person who put that story down considered it essential, and I think with great wisdom, considered it essential to talk about her life BJ, before Jesus. That she had been to doctors. They had tried to cure her. She had tried every remedy known. And nothing worked. Nothing worked. And I don't know if you've ever been to a doctor for yourself or for someone else, and the doctor said, there's nothing I can do. But man, oh man, oh man, you've been hemorrhaging for 12 years, and bleeding for 12 years, and the doctors have all failed, and everything you've tried has failed. And you've probably even gotten some of those quack remedies that you saw on late night TV commercials. Well, she didn't have TV, but you get my point. Where do you go from there? Just recently, and this isn't to turn into a pity party, but just recently I went to my GP because I needed a prescription renewed, and he wanted to see me before renewing it. Good medical practice. And it wasn't much of a thing. He didn't even put a stethoscope on. We just talked for a few minutes, and he did the script. We talked a little bit about how the MS was and all the rest of it. And Laurie Breaker, I don't know if any of you know that name, but he's a nice guy. At the end of it, he looked at me and he sort of swiveled around his chair and looked at me and said, Lauren, I wish there was something I could do for you. I wish there was something I could do for you. I do too. But he said that, and it was just, I won't say that he lost any sleep that night. No, he wouldn't. He's a doctor. But he sagged, just sure there's something I can do for you. And to be on the receiving end of that, he can't do anything for me. Nobody can. They do believe a cure is coming, but nobody can. Nobody can fix me now. And that woman, that's the position she was in. Nobody can do anything. The doctors can't, the quacks can't. Everything she tried and failed. And she was stuck with this. And we don't know how that impacted her life directly, and in terms of energy and all that sort of stuff. But there's one thing that I can absolutely guarantee you. She was an outcast in the community. Because anyone who was bleeding like that was considered ritually unclean. And so nobody would have anything to do with her. Like, she would be pretty much on her own. And so, not only did she have this condition, and if any of you have ever had any condition, you know what the anxiety of having your condition is like. she's also ostracized. So where's her support network? You know? One of the things I said to Lori Brager was, I've really got an amazing support network. And when times get darkest, boy, that support network, she didn't have that. And so the next scenario is this crowd, once again, around Jesus. So he's obviously getting more known now because he's sort of gathering crowds. Ultimately, that's not going to be such a great thing for his earthly life. And this woman goes up to him. And whether it was because of his reputation, or you know what? Maybe. There's nothing in the Bible to say this. Pure speculation. Okay? But we're talking about a small geographic area here. Maybe she was one of the people at the loaves and fishes miracle. Maybe. It is not impossible. And maybe something about her, because of her condition, because of the way her brain worked, because of the way her body was working, because of, who knows? Pure speculation, okay? But everything comes from somewhere. And if she came to Jesus, it wasn't because she woke up that morning and said, I'm going to go see Jesus. It doesn't work that way. Maybe she was at the miracle of loaves and fishes. And that caused her to go, oh, I wonder. And so when she heard that Jesus was coming to town, she might have thought, well, this guy has a lot of power. She wouldn't necessarily have understood what the power was, where it came from. She didn't have any of those questions at that particular point. Maybe she did later. Maybe she'd seen something, maybe. And she said to herself, if I could just get close enough to him, to touch him, if I could just do that, maybe I could be well. And so whatever it took for her to get into that environment, and she probably would have had to push her way through the crowd and all the rest of it, because let's say she's an outcast because of the bleeding. She gets to the point of touching, and it's a crowd. And Jesus, right away, keys on that. Who touched me? You know, and the crowd is practically, well, the disciples are practically mocking. You know, come on, man. You know, it's a parade, you know, and like, of course, people are, no, but Jesus knew that somebody had touched it with intentionality, on purpose, because, you know, it wasn't just somebody brushing up against him. Somebody touched him with intentionality. And so he looks around. And somehow there's a connection here. Man, do I like that. I love that, especially, you know, when we were going on at length about music camp at the beginning today. You know, about forming relationships, forming connections. So there was something there where he connected with the woman. And he knew, just knew. And I don't need to finish the story for you. You know the end of the story. The thing that had caused her life to go in such a, what would have had to be a tragic direction, all of a sudden, abruptly came to an end. And she was given a completely new lease on life. And isn't that absolutely amazing? She was given a completely new lease on life. See, I don't know how many people at that miracle of loaves and fishes got a new lease on life. But I do suspect that Jesus knew that one of the effects that that was going to have was that there were several people, who knows how many, in the crowd who were going to later on have the miracle of loaves and fishes as the trigger for a later realization, and would later get a new lease on life as the information got in and took root, and they pondered and thought, maybe one or two even prayed about it. And you know what, Mary? That's what I hope happens through your ministry, Bishop Mary. her smiles and the sparkle in her eyes and her preaching and teaching and the way she celebrates the Eucharist and the interaction she has with friend and foe and all the opportunities she has that are just incredible gifts to relate to and interact with a secular society. I hope that those create opportunity for people to change their perception about God, towards God, and to come, however it happens, to the point of recognizing the immanence of God, and that an immanent God just might have something to offer to them. Just like I hope this week, some of these teenagers that come back year after year after year, and don't have anything to do with St. Mary's other than music camp, but they keep coming back year after year after year. And some of the kids that are coming back, and some of the new ones, and some of the old ones, and their parents. Why are they coming back? Why are they coming to us? Because it's a fun week, yeah. But there's more to it than that. There's more to it than that. And wouldn't it be a lovely thing and a lovely prayer for us to take, as a congregation, as our image, as an icon, the miracle of the loaves and fishes, that which creates opportunity, and dedicate ourselves to as many loaves and fishes type situations as we could possibly muster. But then also pray for the opportunity, such like a person in the crowd reaches out to touch because they have great need. I've got to say this. I wondered whether I should finish here, but I've got to say this. We are in a time of great need. And you know what? People know it. People know it in their hearts. They know their anxiety. They know their shame. They know their guilt. They know their lack of peace. They know their insecurity, their financial insecurity, relationship insecurity. People know it. And all you have to do is turn on the advertising and you'll see it. Have any of you seen this new ad for Breeze where they've created a new term called nose blind? Have any of you seen that one? Oh, maybe that's because you're all nose blind. You know, everybody's house has a smell. You walk into somebody's house and it has a smell, right? And you can smell it, but the people who are living in it can't. I don't know what our house smells like, but anyway. Every house has a smell, you know, usually not unpleasant. And that's what this commercial is about. You know, that you don't smell your house. And it's this sort of self-help group helping each other recognize that their house has a smell. It's like people's fears and insecurities and all the rest of that sort of stuff. And it's like, Febreze is obviously the answer. And it's done in a semi-jocular way as the commercial unfolds, but it's preying on people's fears and insecurities. It really, really is. And similar, RV Canada, which is a great organization. They rent RVs so you can go across the country. They've got commercials now saying to people, let your kids have their wildhood. Not their childhood, their wildhood. And it's basically saying the kids are patterned too much. They're organized too much. They've got too many organized activities. They haven't got a minute to themselves. It's all programmed. Let them have their wildhood. Stop being a helicopter parent. By the way, I have never ever met a helicopter parent who admitted he or she was a helicopter parent. They were always doing it in the interest of their children. Okay, always, always, always. You know. See, so they're saying, let your kids have their wildhood. They're preying on the realities of our time. And there was a comedian I was listening to this week who was saying, okay, we buy our kids $10,000 worth of toys, and what they really need to do is go into the backyard with a stick and dig a hole in the ground. And it doesn't cost anything. So if you're having trouble making your ends meet at the end of the month, give your kids a stick. You probably got one. See, there's truth there. There's truth there. See, people instinctively know we're not on the right track, but there's something happening. And the advertisers, more than anyone, are really good at preying on the insecurities, the self-doubts, that all that represents. Because we know it. We know there's something wrong in society. We know that families aren't working out the way they're supposed to be. We know that relationships aren't the way they're intended to be. We know that we're being surveilled in all sorts of ways. We know that the company gives you the iPhone with the GPS thing so they know where you are and they know how many times you go to the bathroom during the day if they choose to check on you. We know that companies are saying, we're giving you this and we want it on 24/7. We know that that feels a little weird. That there's something going on. There's an insecurity or a fear that represents or whatever. We know that there's something at the core gone wrong, gone missing in our society. And what Christianity says is, there's a miracle just waiting to happen. You may not perceive it at first as a miracle. You may just see a couple of loaves of bread and maybe a tin of sardines. But man, oh man, oh man, when you see what God can do with a couple of loaves of bread and a tin of sardines, it's going to cause you to think. And maybe what it'll cause you to think of is, wow, when I look at my life and the lives of those around me, we've got some pretty heavyweight needs. And God can meet those too. Let's pray that He meets a whole bunch of needs as He chooses this week at our camp. God, we thank You for the opportunities that You present. By coming into our presence, we can come into Your presence. And I pray, God, this week for our music camp, that it is a time of opportunity to have conversations with the parents and the kids and to create relationships and to get some stuff on the table. And you know what? God, in this place, we're pretty good, I think, at doing the lead work. But sometimes the follow-up is lacking. That needs to improve. So I give You that this morning. And as I pray for us as a parish and as individuals, I continue to pray for our Bishop-elect Mary. Pray that her ministry really would be a reflection of the Loaves and Fishes ministry. Pray that the imminence, Your imminence, would be sensed on some level. God, be with us this week in all we do, in our interactions with one another and with everybody we meet. Let our lives be a blessing. In Jesus' name,
Amen.